Hello and welcome along to WD18, the Watford fan channel with me, Jacob Culshaw. No Charlie Zazera, no Sam Yuko, no special guest on the live stream today in the podcast. Just me talking a little bit about Watford, nil, QPR nil. I thought I'd schedule one in before Premier League games because obviously you've had the 1:30 kickoff, but also the 4:00 kickoff, which is the big one, Liverpool versus Manchester City. Big one at Vicarage Road yesterday, probably not as big as the game that's going on at 4:00, but it was a goalless draw at Vicarage Road. It does keep the unbeaten run going for Watford at home to 15 games now. And whilst that is a pretty impressive stat, I say pretty impressive, it's an incredible statistic to have under Tom Cleverley. If you'd said to me this time last year under Valérien Ismaël, we'd have that record because we were so poor at home last season, I probably wouldn't have believed you and would have been asking you a lot of questions. So to keep that run going is really, really important. And I think particularly following it, just managing to get a point on the board in the circumstances yesterday, it was probably a point gain. That's probably my biggest question for all the listeners and watchers today. Was that 1 point gain or 2 points drop? Because I think in the circumstances and the context of the way the game panned out, I think that was a point game for Watford before the game. And if you guys watch my Bristol City reaction to our win, where I didn't think we were particularly great either, there was an improvement in the second half, and Ryan Andrews' quality with the strike kind of bailed us out a little bit, along with two big saves from Backman and Scott Twine hitting the bar. Similar story, actually, to yesterday, just without that bit of quality from Watford in the final third. We'll get all into it today. Please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18, comment down below your thoughts as always, and I'd love to have a conversation in the comment section about this Watford team and what you think of this Watford team at this point in the season. We're sixth in the Championship table with 18 games played, 30 points on the board, 9 wins, 3 draws, 6 defeats to our name. And where you see this Watford team under Tom Cleverley, because I don't think he can get much more from the squad that he has at the moment. And that's nothing against the squad. I do just feel Tom Cleverley is getting the maximum out of the players that he's got. And it does feel like we need a couple of signings in key positions in January. For example, I feel a striker is an absolute guarantee. If we want to be aiming higher, and that's probably the biggest thing to say, is no one really had Watford down to be in this position. A number of Watford fans I spoke to didn't have us down to be in this position come 18 games into the season. So, look, it's almost a little bit of reality check for me to think, you know what, we've had to adjust and just just adjust and change our expectations of this Watford team under Tom Cleverley. Please do leave a like on the video. Drop us a 5-star review if you are listening on audio. I'm sorry to keep banging that drum, but it does go a long way. And apologies, you only have to listen to me today. Normally, there's a few more different opinions and different insights into Watford Football Club at this moment in time. Thanks so much to everyone who's watching live. Do you know what we'll do first is we'll cross over to the lineup that we saw yesterday. So here it is. 2 changes from Tom Cleverley. Yasser Larouci came in. Moussa Sissoko came in to start. So it was Daniel Backman in goal with the back three of Matty Pollock, Francisco Sierralta, Ryan Porteous, with Yasser Larouci at left wing back, Ryan Andrews at right wing back, Moussa Sissoko and Imran Loza as the midfield 2, with Chatfadazzi on the left, Bayo through the middle, and Edu Kiyembe through the right. Now, I do have to say, this felt like a bit of an awkward time to play QPR. And the reason being is they're on the back of a win in midweek against Cardiff. And whatever anyone says, psychologically, for QPR not only to pick up their first league win of the season, but also to move off the bottom of the Championship table is a confidence boost. Whatever everyone says, they're still in the relegation zone, but they were at the foot of the table for quite a few weeks now. It felt like a long time anyway, in the first 18 games of this Championship season. For them to move from 24th to 23rd, although it's small, just to get that win and just to move off the bottom of the table, it just meant there was a little bit of momentum from QPR going into this one. Now, with our home records, you'd still back Watford to be favourites. I certainly did, even despite that win for QPR in the week and the way we've been playing at home. You could kind of tell that in the first half. And when you bring up the momentum bar just here, if you guys can see that, and for people who are listening on audio, you can particularly see in that first half that QPR, and especially towards the end, towards half-time, we really had Watford against the wall, and we were on the ropes for periods, weren't we? I mean, if you look at the first half statistics as well, when we talk about the chances that QPR created, 3 big chances. And this is why I give Daniel Backman the man of the match and player of the match yesterday. because the crucial moment at 0-0, Dan Batman saved above his head. And actually, it's weird, isn't it? Because when you look at Dan, when he comes out, you think normally keepers spread themselves, don't they? But actually, he's got his hands above his head and he's tipped it behind. And look, this is one thing about Batman that we have to keep mentioning. He is, I'd go as far to say, bailed us out in the last 2 games with 2 massive saves against Bristol City and a massive save against QPR. Well, in tandem with QPR being really poor in front of goal. And I can think of that Batman save. I can think of the ball squared across the box. I can think of the penalty that they should have been awarded. As you can see on the thumbnail, did Watford get lucky? And I think they did with that penalty decision. Ryan Porteous with pretty much a volleyball shot away from the 6-yard box. And what I really liked about Porto was the fact that you see he tapped on his shoulder to say it hit him on the shoulder. But Ryan Porteous got away with one, Watford got away with one. And that first half, really, although we had more of the ball and we were getting in some decent wide areas, we were really struggling, I thought, to progress the ball from the first third to the final third. The midfield just wasn't working, was it? And you can understand now why Cleverley moved to a 4 at the back formation and 3 in midfield, because it just wasn't working against QPR. If I can make this slightly bigger, there we go. So you can have a little look at that. That midfield 2 of Louza and Sissoko, whilst Louza was one of our better players, actually him and Backman were my 2 standout performers yesterday. That midfield 2 with Sissoko and Louza just wasn't, the balance just seemed a little bit off, to be completely honest with you. And as I say, we were getting in some decent wide areas. But what I want to show you is the average position of this Watford team in general. So this was with the first half and the first 20 minutes of the second half. You can see the back 3 is kind of in a mid block, but Andrews is quite high, Larousse is quite high. But look at that midfield 2 of Sissoko and Louza almost getting in the way of each other. And that adds up to what we saw, I think, yesterday. Then you bring into account that Kiembe here, number 39, is a little, well, I guess he's a little bit too deep. Can he be a bit further forward? A lot of what Kiembe was doing was back to goal. He wasn't making any runs in behind. Chakvedati was almost trying to play as a second striker, but he was dropping in as well. And Vacuum Bio, considering that's your number 9, is quite deep, I think. And then when you bring on the substitutions, which was the change in the second half from Tom Cleverley, look at the average position changing. Quadro Bar high up the pitch, Rocco Vata stretching the game. Vacuum Bio hasn't really changed, but Georgie's position, considering he was the highest of a midfield 3, is in a good area as well. Imran Luzer's holding it all together. And then you look at Festi Ebasale, number 36, who's inverting. So my point is, the substitution that Tom Cleverley made allowed Watford to push further up the pitch. And in a game where our backs were up against the wall and the back 3 were deep, the midfield 2 wasn't really working. Kiembe, I didn't feel worked in the first half, and you can see why he was taken off. I just feel like Kiembe is one of those players where I think he's the one player who just doesn't fit the system. He doesn't fit the system, Kiembe, and Tom Cleverley tried to shoehorn him into this right forward position, which worked at the start of the season. When I think of Stoke, I think of Derby at home, where he got a couple of goals and he was shooting on sight whenever he got the opportunity. It was clear that he was being told to do that. But when you're playing a little bit deeper and you're being boxed in a little bit, you need someone like your right forward to turn and get us up the pitch. And Kiembe wasn't doing that. Neither was Chakvedati, really. He was dropping in deep to get on the ball. Bio wasn't in the game. And I think it's back-to-back games where the front 3 just hasn't clicked. It hasn't worked. And it meant that going into half-time, I felt Watford should have been 2-0 down and QPR should have had a penalty. If I'm being completely honest with that first half, I would go as far to say that was Watford's worst half of the season. Some people would say slightly over the top. I just felt even Cleverley, his body language on the sideline, everyone was looking at each other thinking, what? It just felt like it wasn't clicking. And I would say Cleverley was bold with the substitutions. And I actually put a tweet out saying Cleverley was, when in reality, he had to make those changes, didn't he? Now, I was surprised he switched to a back 4 rather and going to a 4-3-3 with Sierralta on a yellow card. It's back-to-back games with him where it looks like he could have picked up a second yellow. And you're looking at him thinking he's going to go here if Cleverley doesn't take him off. So I'm glad Cleverley did. But he brought on Rocco Vata, Quadro Bar, and as I say, it just meant that Watford could push up the pitch and we looked more direct. There was a lot of impact, wasn't there, from the 2 substitutes, particularly Bar. And I spoke to a few QPR fans afterwards who said as soon as he picked up the ball, there was this air in the away end that he was going to make something happen. And with Kenneth Powell only lasting around 60 minutes, 70 minutes in the end, it meant that Morgan Fox came on and he was really peppering that QPR left side and Watford's right-hand side. And I just felt that Watford looked a lot better. I thought Sissoko struggled in the first half. I thought he looked slightly better further forward in the midfield three. Larouci had to move to left back. Matty Pollock and Porteous, it's a lot of moving about in the game. It changes system. It's not as simple as just, I guess, literally moving a few players here and there. Whilst it is as simple as that, the players have to adapt and you're trying to play a slightly different way to how you have for most of the season. But that midfield three, Loser, where it came really close, didn't it? It's that free kick effort that just hit the bar and almost went past Paul Nardi in the QPR net. And to an extent, it was a game of two halves, and I wanted to get that momentum bar just up again. I know Charlie would love me talking about this as much as I have done, but you see the first half, that particularly towards the end, that QPR were putting us under a lot of pressure. But in the second half, Watford were the better team, and yet you still come away thinking, were we slightly lucky? Because Zancella had a brilliant opportunity to win it at the death for QPR. It hit the post. He got in behind Loser and Matty Pollock, if I remember correctly. It's gone off the post, and it was just one of those days where QPR, despite the XG only being 1.25, they created 5 big chances to Watford's 1 big chance. Our expected goals was 0.79. So I don't think that particularly tells the whole story of how close QPR came to winning that yesterday. And that, just to bring it back around to why I gave Batman man of the match, is because it was at that moment, I believe, it changed the complexion of the game. If QPR score there, they're a team that notoriously come out the blocks pretty quickly and fade as the game went on. And that was pretty much the story of yesterday, where the first half, they kind of eased themselves into the game actually a little bit more, but the way they finished the first half was really strong. And in the second half, Tom Cleverley's substitutions, ultimately with the pace, the power, and just the directness of Quadro Bar and Rocco Vata, who both looked bright when they came on, particularly Bar. He was brilliant, I thought, down the right-hand side. Bar, Loser and Backman, my 3 standout players. But Backman's save in that first half was such a big moment, because if they score their QPR, then they sit deep, they make it really difficult for Watford. And then it's asking for Watford to break down a QPR team that actually, are on the back of that win at Cardiff and would have put in a really big effort, I think, obviously, to keep us out. So that's why I gave Batman my player of the match. I think Daniel makes a fantastic point. Good to see you, Daniel. I really think we were missing Deli Bashiru in that midfield. I would really like to see Loser and Deli Bashiru as a midfield too. At this moment, though, I think Sissoko needs to be dropped for Pierre Duomo. Now, from what I saw from Duomo against Sheffield Wednesday, what I saw in brief spells at Swansea is someone who can progress the ball up the pitch and is sharp with his passing and looks like a positive influence on that midfield. And the balance looks pretty nice in there with him. And also he can play in a midfield 3 as well. I just think that Duomo gives us a lot more dynamism in midfield than Sissoko. Now, don't get me wrong, Sissoko has his pros. He has a bit of steel. He has that element that he'll give us a bit of discipline at times. I say that, well, he could have given away a couple of penalties this season. He does bring us a bit of steel. I think that's probably the word to say in that midfield too. But I just think that Duomo and what Tom Cleverley wants from his midfield too, it's pretty obvious that he should be coming in. Loser seems like a man who's on a redemption arc to Watford fans' hearts, where it seemed like he was down and out when he went on loan to Lorient, and he's really been kind of bedded in at the start of the season. Cleverley's managed his minutes, and he's come back in and looking like a bright spark. And actually, might be a controversial take, I think when you look at the technical quality of players in the Watford squad, him and Chatfordazzi are the 2 best. Even an argument to say that Loser is probably the best. When you actually look at his first touch and you look at his passing and his vision, he's someone who can change the course of the game, I think. But Loser is really growing into that role, and I just feel like Duomo's now been asked, needs to be brought into the team. I was disappointed with Kiembe. I thought Bio was poor. I thought the subs changed the game. I thought we looked ultimately the back line maybe wasn't as strong as it normally is because of the amount of pressure that QPR put us under. And I do think some of it was self-inflicted. We didn't stamp our authority on the game. Whilst we were getting into more advanced areas, our crossing was poor from wide areas. We weren't creating anything clear-cut in the first half. And that did change in the second. I mean, if I'm thinking about opportunities, I mentioned Loser hitting the crossbar, Sissoko getting to the byline, and he skied it when he could have just squared it to Bayo. But Bar got to the byline quite a bit. we looked bright, but we didn't really have any end product, and neither did QPR, which was probably it was a blessing for us in the end. Now, I didn't want to dwell on this game too much because, as I said, Watford remains sixth in the Championship table. Look, we've got Cardiff up next away. It's a couple of away games for us now, where you look at Cardiff, you look at Hull City away for Watford as well, who are going to be under a new manager, which is going to be confirmed, I'm sure, at some point very, very soon. But you look at Cardiff away, Hull away, then West Brom at home, Burnley away, and then Portsmouth and Cardiff at home to end 2024. So you look at that run now. Watford are unbeaten in their last 4, 2 draws and 2 wins against Oxford, win, Plymouth, draw, Bristol City, win, QPR, draw. Now, whilst that is a decent record, I would expect us to get what we've got out of those 4 games. And also, just to sort of reiterate this, I think in the context of the game yesterday, it's not a bad point. In the context of where QPR are on the table, it's probably not the best point. But when you've watched the game, and I'm sure all of you did, you probably would take a point because it wasn't 2 points dropped by the end of it. It probably was 2 points dropped by the start. I don't think you would have taken a point at the start, as I say, with our home record, but it does keep that unbeaten record going to 15 games now. I think my biggest takeaway from yesterday was I could spend the next 15 minutes picking apart that Watford performance. Ultimately, we're in a position that I don't think a lot of people had us down to be in. As I say, we're 6th in the league, 18 games played, 30 points on the board. And the away record is something that needs to be rectified because every single one of our defeats this season has come away from home. Slight progression with that Plymouth draw, but I'm not getting too carried away with that, with the way they're playing after that Norwich defeat and after the defeat they sort of suffered at the weekend. But what I would say is, and some people might say you're being a bit of a happy clapper, it is now entertaining and you feel real connection to this Watford team, which I think we have missed in recent times. And I don't take that for granted because at times last season, going to Vicarage Road felt like a bit of a chore with the football that we were watching and also the results that we were getting. Now you go to Vicarage Road, win, lose or draw, and expect a level of performance. Now, whilst that performance didn't reach the levels that I'd expect yesterday, it still reached a level where you go, you know what? It's not a case of, not that we weren't trying, but there was the maximum effort, maximum commitment, but we lack quality. And that, I think, can be rectified in January with a few crucial signings. I'm looking at a striker. I'm looking at a bit more depth in that forward line, someone who can maybe play across the left and the right. I'm also looking at the midfield. I actually think when you look at it on paper, our most in-depth position and probably the position with the most strength is our back line. You know, with our back three, with Porteous, Pollock, Sierralta, Ben will probably play at some point. If needed, Tikvich can come in. There's enough quality, I think, or enough depth in that position that will be okay. And you look at the 2 fullbacks as well. Ebisele can play left or right. Andrews is a right wing back. Ken Sema can play there as well. And Gak is back into the team. I'm not really concerned about the defence at this moment in time. And our defensive record is pretty good, especially when you consider the amount of clean sheets. That's another clean sheet on the board for Watford. And if you look at that at home, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clean sheets at home this season. So the defence is not a concern for me. My concern is, can we maximise our end product in the final third? And I've seen people say that Georgie Chatfordazzi should be doing more. And whilst I agree he should be, he's still creating the most clear-cut chances in the team. And statistically, that's backed up as well. Bar's a fascinating one, though. Whilst when you look at him and you watch him, and opposition fans say, why isn't he starting for you guys every single week? I don't know if you guys have noticed it as well, but he's not the same player when he starts to when he comes off the bench. And I'd love to hear from Tom Cleverley as to why he thinks that's the case, because he was quiet in midweek. And don't get me wrong, I thought the Bristol City press meant that they limited the attacking output of Chakvedadze, of Quadro Bar, of Vacuum Bio. But there's definitely it's almost a difference when you bring Bar on and say, you've just got to run at your man and you've got to be direct and don't overthink it. Just be as direct as possible at the QPR back line. There's a real shift in his performance, I think. And Rocco Vata is someone who I'd like to see us give more game time to, because I'd much rather see Quadro Bar or Rocco Vata play and maybe have a quieter performance than shoehorning Edu Kiembe into the team. And look, Kiembe has his qualities. He's season, but I think yesterday just highlighted once again a player that isn't suited to the system and doesn't naturally fit into the system, I believe, that Tom Cleverley wants to play, this 3-4-2-1 formation that can go to a 4-3-3 or can even go to a 5-4-1. I just don't think he suits it. And he's not a player who can play in a midfield too. I do feel like Duomo needs to come into the team. And look, Cleverley's tinkering with the team, isn't it? He made 2 changes yesterday. He made 3 changes in the week. Look, he's managing the squad well, which it goes under the radar. And whilst we have been a bit lucky in the last 2, he is managing the squad, and that will be needed come the end of the season. But I think he's got to look at certain positions and think, is it for the best of the team? And I think Sissoko and Kiembe, the 2 players at the moment that for me stand out as 2 that just aren't really clicking for whatever reason. I think Duomo needs to come in. I'd like to see more of Vata. I want to see Bar putting those performances in from the start. And there's maybe something to be said actually about why we start games quite slowly. And QPR managed that quite well, I thought. They nullified us in the first 15-20, and then they grew into the first half and ended it pretty strongly. Whereas you look at the way Watford started yesterday, we just don't seem to get any rhythm. And I don't know why really, whereas we came out for the second half, Cleverley's given them a rocket, I'm sure, because it was a poor level of performance. And we look at a different team with more intensity, with more tempo, with more directness to our play. So overall, on the game yesterday, look, I think that was one of those games you could look back on and QPR could have scored 2 or 3 in the first half. They absolutely should have had a penalty. They should have scored a couple. They could have nicked it at the end. Granted, Watford were the better team in the second half and Loser hit the bar, and we should have made more of that pressure that we were sustaining on QPR in the second half. But I think when you take a step back and you look at this Watford season as a whole, in the first 18 games, we're about a third of the way through now, and I predicted us to finish 17th this season. There's still a long way to go. We've got 30 points on the board, which is a really good start to this championship season, I think. Obviously, a 46-game season, so there's a long, long way to go. I just again, it was probably my takeaway from the recent performances and results. Maybe less so results because we've only lost 1 in our last 7 games, and that was Swansea away, where it was we didn't play very well that day, but we won against Blackburn, obviously thumped Sheffield Wednesday 6-2, beat Oxford, drew to Plymouth, etc. It's one defeat in our last 7. I just feel like we're a couple of signings away from either coasting to mid-table or giving the playoffs a good go. I genuinely do believe that's sort of the dilemma for Gianluca Nani, Virginio Pozzo, Scott Duxbury, less so Tom Cleverley, because I think if you said to Tom Cleverley, do you want to upgrade certain positions? Do you want to have a look at the market and pick out a couple of players? I think he'd jump at the opportunity to do that and just tweak it. And like he's done all season, I know I say tinker, the tinker man, he might be the new tinker man, to tweak it. But I think he'll be looking at that striker position. And while Vakinbayo has 7 goals to his name, he's a bit hot and cold, as we've seen, in the last month, but then the month before he was a bit quieter. We don't really have another option to play down the middle. Jebison, I wouldn't surprise me if he returns to Bournemouth in January. It hasn't worked out for whatever reason. Potentially another central midfielder in there. I know someone like Hector Cipriano, who we've been linked with for a few windows now, would be a good signing, I think, from Peterborough, the Peterborough captain, but would cost a little bit for us. Could we maybe go in for Ali Al Hamadi from Ipswich on loan, someone to come in and instantly improve our striking position? These are the sort of signings that I think Watford should be looking at. And just to reiterate, to bring it back round before I get onto some of the comments, I think it just goes to show when you take a step back and you look at this Watford team, you could pick apart the last 2 performances, as I said, but ultimately, I don't think Tom Cleverley, and bear in mind this is a team with a lot of young players in it. If we actually look, if I get that back onto the screen now, just the team I saw yesterday, very, very quickly. Sorry, this is the technical difficulties that normally come in. Oh, there we go. We got it up here. If you look at how young that team is, you've got Matty Pollock, who's 23. You've got Orion Andrews, who's 20. You've got Chatford, that's who's 25. There's young players in there. And when you go onto the bench, Ebasele's 23, international player. Barr's only 21. Rocco Vata's 20. James Morris is only 23. Duomo's 20. Dumby is 18. The average age of the Watford team, granted, is 26. But actually, we've got quite a young squad in terms of the average age of the starting 11 is 26, which is about average, as you can see with QPR as well. They've got some stalwarts in there, haven't they, with Jimmy Dunn, Steve Cook, even, Paul Smith, who's been around as well, Liam Morrison, etc. But you look at that bench; it's a youthful bench with a bit of experience of Tom Ince, etc. And I think Tom Ince and Ebosele had good class, and Ngakia as experienced players just because they've been around for a little bit. I guess one of the conundrums that someone's mentioned, like Fabian has said, is whether he brings back Rajovic in the transfer window in January. Would you bring him back? That's a question for the comment section. But James D, I totally agree with you, James D. I'm loving this season. This is surely more than what we could have hoped for, and I totally agree. It's more than I would have hoped for at this point in terms of points. And I think what happens is because we get into a position where we're sixth in the league and we're doing a lot better than a lot of people imagine, so people start to go, God, we can maybe get the playoffs here, 18 games in. Now, that might be something that we look back on in 18 games' time and think, what were you on about? But the table doesn't like this moment in time. Watford are sixth in the league and they're in that picture. And then we've had a couple of results, which, look, I think over the course of the championship season, it does even itself out. When you look at some of the last-minute winners we've had, when you look at some of the decisions that have been made, it does. I mean, you look at the Porteous one yesterday, I keep banging on about it, but I don't know how he's got away with it. But I think when you look at this season, I love going to Vicarage Road, which I always love going to Vicarage Road, but I didn't find it as enjoyable, obviously, because of the style of the football and also the results that we were getting last season. And Tom Clevey made it a priority at the start. And you do really feel a connection to this Watford team. As I said, on paper, it's not the best Watford squad that we've seen over the years, but it's got real heart. It's got real commitment. It's not for the lack of trying it. Sometimes it could be a lack of quality, I think, in key moments. And that's where I just think a couple of tweaks of this Watford squad, and we can maybe look upwards and being in that playoff mix. Great to see you, VJ. James, they agree. Doing well with our limited resources. Philip says Barr is better off the bench because fullbacks tire in the last 20 minutes. I agree, but having said that, he made an impact when he came up 45, and players aren't tiring at the start of the second half. Immediately, he changed the course of the game, I thought, when he came on, Barr, because if I bring back the average position, if you look how far he is up the pitch, Quadro Barr, look at that. Look at where he is. He's basically right on the start of the final third. And when you compare that to our attackers in the first half, Kiembe, who is just inside the opposition, well, just inside, a little bit inside the opposition half, Quadro Barr rather is about 10, 15 yards further up the pitch, and that ultimately means that we as a group can push up further up the pitch as well. And I think that's the thing with him and Rocco Vata is they do just pin fullbacks back, because fullbacks then can't go, you know what, I'm going to have to pick and choose my moments to commit. And whilst QPR, I thought, did that pretty well, he was a real game changer, I thought. Quadro Barr, sorry, Vacuum Bar wasn't a game changer yesterday. Victor, good to see you, mate. We're definitely punching above our weight. Just a couple of loan players. Any spare nuts in January? James D says, I think we need a striker with real pace to fit in with our style of playing. Agreed. Rajovic is too slow. Bio too. We need someone with pace of the likes of Dennis. Where is he now? I'm not sure where Emmanuel Dennis is. He went back to Nottingham Forest following his loan spell with us. I agree, though, in terms of the runs and the pace, because what's happening at the moment is Vacuum Bio, whilst his hold-up play was poor yesterday, on the whole, it's been pretty good this season. But he does it. He made a couple of runs yesterday. But the thing is with Bio, sometimes I just think he doesn't make runs with intent. He kind of stays at the back post waiting for the ball, and I don't think he's that proactive with his runs. I feel like he's quite reactive. He almost makes the run after a decision has been made, or he makes a run after someone has decided to do something, rather than dictating when the pass is being played and making that run so someone tries to find him. Look, I agree. I think we need someone who can stretch the game for us, and Vacuum Bio is a different option, but he's not the sort of player who will do that. He's someone who is hot and cold. I think that's the best way to describe Vacuum Bio. Hamza, good to see you, Hamza. This home form is going to get us playoffs. I like the confidence. But if these self-inflicted results like this and Plymouth continue, we're going to struggle to go up. Yeah, I mean, look, it depends what your expectation is, Hamza. If you're looking at it thinking we have a really good opportunity to go up, then I totally agree with you. Now, whilst I do agree we do have a good opportunity to give the playoffs a really good push, I don't think we're going to be in the automatic promotion spot at this moment in time unless we have a lot of squad depth. I think there is a gap between the top four in this division, particularly your likes of your Sunderlands, your Sheffield Uniteds, etc., who they just have a bit more quality. But what you can say about this Watford team is they will go toe-to-toe with teams. And whilst we might not come away with the victory, you always know now, I think, that we'll go to teams Luton is probably the exception. Well, we'll give teams a really good game, regardless of the result. I do think the home form is a massive thing. Ultimately, look, obviously we want it to continue for as long as possible. That home form is gonna fizzle out at some point. I do think it's unrealistic to expect us to go the whole season. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I don't think we will, because that will be yesterday's a prime example, a result that could have easily just switched like that. But yes, I do know what you mean in terms of the self-inflicted results, the way we managed the game against Plymouth, the way we were sloppy yesterday at times. It's to be expected over the course of the season, but I do agree with what you're saying. James D says, was a strange game yesterday. It felt very subdued on the pitch and in the stands, especially in the first half. Look, again, I agree with you in the sense of it being subdued, James, because the context of QPR coming into this on the back of a win, midday kickoff, QPR being a little bit of a bogey team for us over the years, from what I can remember. Even they were singing about winning the league at Vicarage Road. I know that Lloyd Doyley game as well. That's another good one. I say bogey team. We won against them 4-0, didn't we, on the opening day last season? But I guess because they were on the back of that win and it was their first league win of the season, the fact they were in the relegation zone, it was an early kickoff. I just felt a little bit nervous, didn't it? It was one of those games, and I feel like at Vicarage Road, the start of the half really dictates how we play. And maybe there's a suggestion, maybe I'm just going to throw it out there, we need to face the Rookery in the first half, because there's definitely a difference in the momentum and in the shift of us facing towards the Rookery, and the confidence and the energy and the intensity of our play just building as the game goes on. I feel like when we're attacking the family stand and the away ends, I don't know what it is, but we just don't seem to start games well. So I don't know if Batman or one of the leaders is watching, Sissoko, Matty Pollock, etc., maybe flip it around and get us going towards the Rookery in the first half, and just see if that changes the intensity of our starts, because we are a little bit slow out the blocks. But in the second half, we started really, really quickly. And yeah, it's not just because of the Rookery, because there's the substitutions, etc. But that might be just something to mention. Just a few more comments before I let you go. Well, you can go when you want, but you know what I mean, before I go and move on. VJ says, big fan of Bio, but minutes need to be managed. Charlotte, great to see you. That free kick going in would have boosted Loser's confidence. He was gutted, wasn't he, when he missed that, and it just didn't creep under the crossbar. We need Chatford-Atsey to convert some chances also. So we want Chatford-Atsey in the sense that of someone of such technical quality, the way he strikes a ball is not to the same level at which he plays the game. Someone who's so good with his passing, with his dribbling, with his touch, with his vision, his ball striking, bar Millwall away, you don't really see him hit a clean strike, rarely, but that's one to mention. Hamza said, Ayesi Ayuda from Feyenoord, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, currently injured, so may be available in January, but would be a good quality player, and Poco from Peterborough would be a class signing, especially. Sorry, just a swig of water before we wrap it up. And I think that is where we're going to leave it. Let me know your thoughts on any of the comments that I made today. Apologies, it is very much just me having a conversation on my own. It's a podcast with me on my own. That's probably hearing too much of my own voice at this moment in time. It is a little bit earlier as well. If you're listening to this on audio, we've recorded this in between. I think it was Chelsea Villa and obviously City versus Liverpool at Anfield as well. So just wanted to get this reaction in. Looking forward to the Cardiff game next Saturday. As Charlotte says, score predictions against former Watford Watford first team coach, who is now the head coach at Cardiff. I don't know if he's going to get the job permanently, Omar Reza. They drew away at Coventry. An 87th minute commentary penalty meant they didn't get all 3 points. I think we'll get a point on the board. I'm going to go for a 1-1 at Cardiff. This time we played them last season. Vacuum Bio, didn't he? Went around the goalkeeper, put it into an empty net, just creeped over the line. I was there with Charlie that day, and it was a great day out. I recommend. I can't make it this Saturday, but if anyone goes, it's always a good night out, Cardiff. So it's Cardiff up next, then Hull away as well. Let us know your thoughts on those two in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on my takes today. If you agree, disagree, I'd love to have a conversation with you in the comment section. I know it's a slightly early stream and a slightly earlier podcast. As always, this is brought to you in partnership with Hertfordshire Mind. No donations for this game, but obviously it's been a pretty good month. Obviously, when we beat Oxford 1-0, we had 2 goals against Plymouth and 1 against Bristol City. So a £5 will be going into the pot. Oh, and obviously you've got the 6 goals from Sheffield Wednesday. So £11 will be going into the pot for myself, Sam and Charlie. If you'd like to get involved with that initiative, in the comment section below and in the description, you can click the link and it will take you there to Hertfordshire Minds. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18, drop us a 5-star review as always. Really do appreciate it. Hope you've had a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will see you very, very soon. Take care and up the orders. You want.